This is Dexter Robinson, Entrepreneurship 610, situation analysis consisting of a SWOT, PESTLE, Porter's Five Forces, and Porter's Value Chain. Our Triad is a cloud service company located in North Carolina. We focus on cloud services and management for other businesses from small to large. We also do WordPress management. As many of you know, WordPress has multiple plugins and different types of software that can be utilized, and somewhat confusing to those that are not as familiar with the plugins. While WordPress is user friendly, I think the plugins actually make it a little bit more confusing than what it really needs to be. And the last part that our Triad actually offers is a learning community for those that are interested in learning more about the cloud. As in most cases with technology, technology just comes out and happens so fast. It's a very organic field. Many times, especially from large corporations, they come out with new features or products or services, and they do not have experts in the field to actually help their customers take on those new products and services. So many times there's small businesses out there that will become the experts in whatever product or services that are offered at a wide range of companies that are trendy, and essentially offer their services and become experts for that product or service. So why cloud? I feel like cloud is something that people have heard of, but they don't necessarily understand, and rightfully so, because it's a technology that is still currently growing. Essentially, the cloud is going to replace the laptop or desktop that people currently use. So to point out just a couple of things, I found a Forbes article, Roundup of Cloud Computing Forecasts by Luis Columbus. I just wanted to point out a few things. You can actually just Google the link on the bottom to read the full article. But as you'll note, that first arrow on the top left mentions that the cloud computing is projected to get to 162 billion by 2020. We're currently in 2018. In 2015, it was 67 billion. The next thing that I think is extremely important is the arrow that's directly under that, where it says 74% of tech chief financial officers say cloud computing will have the most measurable impact on their business in 2017. And then lastly, I think this gives the full picture of how cloud computing is changing the tech field. So cloud computing spending is growing at 4.5 times the rate of IT spending since 2009, is expected to grow at better than 6 times the rate of IT spending from 2015 through 2020. So that essentially means that people are moving somewhat away from IT specialists and leaning more towards the cloud computing. And cloud computing actually saves many of these large companies quite a bit of money. So the skill set and expertise in cloud computing is very lucrative if you can catch wind and build up some great partnerships with companies. So the first analysis that we actually looked at was a SWOT analysis, so that we can look at our business internally as well as externally. So internally, we looked at our strengths and weaknesses, and externally, we looked at our opportunities and threats. Internally, our strengths are that we have skilled professionals. Kevin Robinson leads the way. He's a partner and president of the company in the sense that he's been in technology for over 35 plus years. The last 15 years, he's worked with Microsoft. He's been ranked as high as #3 in the world in his specializations. So plenty of recognition. He has clients through his professional experiences that are very aware of his ability and knowledge within the tech industry, which helps leverage our business with bringing on some of our more notable partners. The learning and develop community is something very unique. It's almost as if you went back to the 90s and you were in forums or Ask Jeeves, things like that. But this learning community essentially is an opportunity for people who aren't as familiar or all the way through experts to learn more about just the different services and things that you can do within the cloud platforms, which is particularly important in technology, just because technology is so new and things are created so quickly that very seldomly are experts able to become experts in a specific setting, because they always have to know just enough to get by, and then by the time they begin learning more and more, there's already a new product or service that's available. So creating this learning community allows people to learn at an expedited pace, as well as customized to the level of foundational level of knowledge for each person. The next thing that we offer are training for our clients. So some clients would prefer that we just help transition them to a cloud platform. So actually the training comes in after we transition them to a cloud platform. We'll offer to actually train their internal team to maintain their cloud platform, which some companies prefer. And then the last thing that I think is one of our best strengths and something that we pride ourselves on is that we can actually grow with our partners. So that gives us the ability to work with small businesses that may have 1 to 5 employees to large businesses that may have 500 plus employees. On to our weaknesses. So currently, starting out as a business, we've just finished our first year and things are really starting to flow, but in comparison to other companies, we have a limited cash flow and financial resources just because we're starting out, going into our second year now, where we're starting to see consistent funds on a monthly basis come in through some of the customization plans that we have with some of our partners as well as clients. The next piece there is obviously because of our limited finances, travel can be limited unless our partners or clients are willing to get us to their location. Fortunately for something like cloud, it allows us to do a lot of consultation remotely, but ideally we would love to build a rapport with our clients, so we establish that longevity in that partnership, and goes back to our strength with being able to grow with our partners. The other weakness was just the low total of clients. Starting out, obviously, in your first year, you want to be somewhat selective with the clients that you have. Make sure that you build a good rapport so that you can actually use those clients later on as references for some of your future clients. So we really have been somewhat selective in who we've worked with in our first year, and those things are paying off greatly, just from a public relations standpoint with partners like Goodwill, as well as within the tech industry with partners like Tech Systems. The next piece is full-time employment. As with most small businesses, it's fairly difficult for anyone to start out as full-time. So once that cash flow starts rolling again, we'll be able to transition into full-time roles. As I mentioned earlier, Kevin, our skilled professional, will be the first to transition into a full-time role. Onto the external pieces of our SWOT analysis are the opportunities. So within our triad, we have the potential to create some IP, some intellectual property. So I won't talk on it very much, but we do know that that is one thing that's in the works. It has something to do with our learning community and how we develop folks, as well as something I'll mention later on in the presentation that we refer to as a cloud army. Currently, the other opportunity that's really good for our triad is that we have limited competition, in the sense that there's not very many other cloud service companies that are offering the customization and the customer support that we offer. A good bit of our competitors are actually automated services. So there's limited human interaction and back and forth, which is great if everything's going fine with your cloud platform. But once you begin to hit issues, or if something goes wrong, finding somebody to be able to fix that problem could be difficult. So that level of rapport and that individual contact that we have with our clients is a great opportunity for us to continue to bring on other clients. And then lastly, the other opportunity is brand recognition through clients. As I mentioned before, we've been able to do some things within public relations as far as community engagement and classes, as well as some of our larger clients that we've selectively taken on earlier in the process. Some of those things are going to be great to be able to say that we partnered with these larger companies that are already have a name recognition to them, not just within the tech industry, but across the board in common conversations. The last piece of the SWOT analysis is the threats. So there's going to be an increase in competition just because the cloud platform, as we stated before, why the cloud, right? That platform is going to continue to draw more and more people. The usage is going to continue to increase, which is going to bring more businesses into the fold. So the increase in competition is there. It'll be there. And with this industry, the way that it's growing at a rapid pace, it's something to be expected, which is why we think that rapport with our clients and partners is going to be really big. The next threat is just new technology. As we stated earlier, more and more times and even more quickly than before, there's new technology, new products, new services that are coming out. People are thinking of innovative ways to be able to do things. So it's not as large of a threat, but really being able to just stay abreast of what's coming out, what type of company, other companies are partnering with each other to make hybrid platforms, and do we understand those platforms so that we can stay on top of our game. The next threat is timely payments. So with customized plans and things like that, and small businesses and large businesses, invoices can be tricky, and really being able to negotiate within the budget of some of our clients and partners is going to be difficult and challenging, but it creates a stronger partnership in the long run. So that's something that, while it is a threat and payments at times may not be able to come on times, obviously the more clients that we take on, it's not as big of a threat if we have to, if there's a waiting period in between payments, but ideally we would like those things to be as timely as possible. And the last piece is really just project management. So as we continue to take on more and more partners, we have to make sure that there's enough people within our organization to take on those partners and the level of services that they're requesting. So that's going to be really big, is the project management and having to be strategic, which essentially could slow down our profit margins in the way that, depending on what people need and their demand. So just making sure that we're actually able to take on all the clients that would like to work with us could be a potential threat. You'd hate to turn somebody away that is going to be a client that could potentially bring on other clients. So just being real strategic about how do you do that, what does that look like, and making sure that everyone is getting optimal service and their needs are being met. The next analysis that we'll look into is the PESTLE analysis. So the PESTLE analysis breaks down into political, economic, sociocultural, technological, legal, and ethnical or environmental categories. So the first is political. So federal regulations are going to be huge, as well as state regulations. So some of the companies that we want to work with are going to be within the government, right? So that's going to be huge. So for example, the Federal Communications Committee, recently in the news, there's been a lot with Trump reversing some of the internet privacies. So that doesn't directly impact us, but how does it indirectly impact us? In the way that, if you really think about it, they're talking about how information is being collected, and essentially, if information is being collected, that means it's being stored, which would be our department, right? So where does that information go? How is that information protected? With everyone moving to the cloud, in some way, shape, or form, cloud is going to be involved in those conversations. So keeping a watchful eye on the FCC and just some of the other regulations and policies that come out and how they directly or indirectly impact us is going to be very important. Some of the folks or targeted audiences that we're looking for are folks within the healthcare industry. As you know, many of those records are going to be confidential, and just the exchange of that information, it needs to be secured and in a place. So making sure that you're following those HIPAA regulations, and then if you're working in education, they have something called FERPA, which is also protecting folks' rights within the educational system. So those things are extremely important, and those regulations are pretty intricate and complex. So making sure that as we work with some of those partners, we are aware of those regulations and how they would impact some of the work that we do with potential clients. The next category is really the economic impact that potentially could happen to our triad, or the things that we need to be mindful of. So one is growth. So we said we are growing, or have the ability to grow with our clients. So with that in mind, if our clients aren't growing, essentially we are not growing. So the economic impact of how our businesses are affected is going to be extremely important to us, because that determines how we can work with our businesses and the services that we can offer to them. The next one is historically underutilized businesses certification. So HUB, this is something that our team has gone back and forth on, as to would we want to label ourselves as a HUB business. We are not necessarily tied to the idea. Obviously, it does afford you the opportunity to be a priority for quite a few government departments and agencies to do work with them. So it does offer some great opportunities. The thing that we worry about is just from a branding standpoint, is it something that we want to label ourselves with? Clearly, we know that we're a minority-owned business. So what does that really mean, I think, is the question for us. And then to evaluate the benefits of that. And then the last piece is the transportation. As I mentioned in the SWOT analysis, limited finances within the first year. So wanting to build that rapport with our clients, but not necessarily being able to travel to see our clients could be difficult. You have to be creative with how you can build that client rapport. The next piece is socio-cultural. So obviously with the cloud, there is a ease of access. So people want to be able to get their information immediately. So with the cloud and some security measures, that's available to them. You're not necessarily tied to your personal laptop or your personal desktop or your office anymore. So people love that they can go out and about and they can access the same information from their phone, from their laptop, or if they wanted to even go to a public library. So that's going to be very big. And this is currently our culture is an instant gratification culture. So ease of access is extremely important in the work that we do. The next piece is security. As we mentioned earlier, the different types of clients that we have, securing their information and data is going to be extremely important. But even the common person wants their information secure. So we've all heard of celebrities' phones being hacked, and essentially that hack is actually information usually that's in the cloud. So obviously different platforms have different measures for that information. So a lot of times the things that you hear about getting hacked in those earlier stages were cloud type features. And then the last one is there's going to be a stable increase in demand. So as you saw earlier in the article that we posted with Why the Cloud, essentially the cloud platform is trending, and it's going to continue to have an upward trend. People see it in all aspects of life, whether it's your Gmail or whether it's your mobile device and some of the apps you own. If it's Office 365, cloud is essentially everywhere. If you're using technology in some way, shape, or form, the likelihood that you are in some way, shape, or form using a cloud service is extremely high, and that's going to continue to grow over the next at least decade. So the next piece is T. We're going to talk about technology. One of the difficult things is compatibility. If anybody remembers, computers and first coming out, and Apple versus Microsoft, there was some compatibility issues, and many of those things are on purpose, right? So compatibility is always going to be an issue in technology because you're going to have competitors, and competitors, ideally, they're going to want you to continue to buy their products, right? So if you have a Mac, you probably have an iPhone and an iPad and everything else that starts with an I, right? Because all of those things can talk to each other. So compatibility in the technology industry is huge. What you'll notice in the cloud platforms as well is that people are beginning, or companies are beginning to partner with each other to create hybrid cloud platforms. So to see how those things flush out is going to be pretty important within our industry to make sure that we understand how things are compatible, what is actually compatible, are there workarounds, and just making sure when we take on clients, understanding what they actually have so that we can make sure their utilization is as efficient as possible. The next piece is the increase in options. So right now, there's not a significant number of cloud platforms, but you can only imagine as the industry continues to grow, there's going to be some people that are going to try to infiltrate that top 5. So just making sure that we're aware of those trends in the competitions that competitors that may be coming is going to be really big. And as we mentioned in the SWOT analysis, automated services for cloud platforms is pretty big. And like we said before, one of the things that we just have to be mindful of is that there are going to be companies that feel like that's all they need, and they may, if they run into an issue to where they need a physical person to come and provide a solution, then they may be one-time customers for a specific issue. So that is something that is going to not necessarily hurt us, but something that we need to be aware of as we continue on with our business. The next piece is the legal piece, right? So we mentioned the political aspect with some of the regulations and things that are going into policies, but obviously those have some legal takes on them as well. So we have to be mindful of the regulations within a particular client's industry, whether that's education or healthcare or tech. We just have to be mindful of all the different regulations depending on which industry the client is in. The next piece is a legal team. So obviously we are creating contracts with different types of partners, and being responsible for that. If there's a data breach or anything like that, those contracts really come into play and are important, because at the end of the day, whose responsibility does that weight fall on? So those things are going to be really, really important in making sure that our contracts are reviewed and we understand what type of liabilities that we're taking on by providing cloud services. And the last one is obviously the intellectual property. How do we protect our IP? How do we protect other clients' IP? If we're partnering together, who gets the rights and things like that. So those things are going to be really big as well. And I think it goes hand in hand with the legal team. So obviously, depending on who the client is, there may be some non-disclosure agreements and things like that. So just being really mindful that the legal aspect can get complex very, very fast depending on who your client is and the services that they're requesting. And then the last piece really leans more so on the piece of the environmental side, as far as being energy efficient. So obviously, moving to the cloud, essentially what you're saying is there's no more physical servers. So there's no more days of going to a place like IBM and you walk into a server room and it feels like a refrigerator and there's 100 huge machines that are 8 feet tall and keep all the information in their corporation in that 8 foot tall server. Essentially, the cloud has replaced that. So now all of those large cold rooms are empty and you can actually put people in there. So it helps with storage space, it helps with actual energy and things like that. So there will probably be, once again, some political influences that continue to promote cloud services as well because it's energy efficient. And then, as we mentioned on the legal aspect, exposure to confidential information. It could be, like we said, non-disclosure agreements and things like that. It just depends on the client and what it is that we're working or protecting for them. Obviously, our employees may have access to that information, so we would not want to be liable for a data breach because one of our employers did something that was unprofessional. So just making sure that we are on top of confidentiality and how that impacts our business is going to be extremely important as well. So the next analysis that we did was Porter's 5 forces. So it's broken down essentially into 5 different areas. So the first area is the threat of new entry, which is at the top, and then we're going to go clockwise to the next category is going to be buyer power, and then next is going to be threat of substitution, and then you're going to go into the supplier power, which collectively all talk about the competitive rivalry that we may have within the tech industry. So the threat of new entry, as we mentioned before earlier in our presentation, is that this is a rapidly growing industry. Cloud services is going to continue to grow. So just being mindful of the other competitors that it could bring and some curveballs that may come our way, just depending on the political climate and how folks are influenced. So the next piece is, as we mentioned before, a lot of our competitors are going to be predominantly automated services. So that's what it is currently, but realistically, we don't know what that's going to look like. There could continue to be automated services that are offered, and then there could be more and more businesses that end up being more like ours that are building that rapport with their clients and they're able to do stuff. I think a big factor that's going to help determine what types of competitors we're going to be faced against is these hybrid platforms with different companies partnering with each other. So I think one of the big ones to kind of watch out for is Amazon's web services. Amazon does a great job with partnering with people already. So kind of just watching what that looks like, and Amazon is known to flip an industry upside down, so really understanding what they're doing and keeping abreast of it is going to be extremely important, because essentially if they move the market in a way that benefits them best, it could potentially impact the types of competitors that we have. The other threat of entry I think is big is the validation within the tech industry, right? So most people are going to feel like a lot of tech things can be fairly complicated. So usually you're going to want to lean on someone who has that expertise and professional experience. So once again, that's where Kevin would come into place, but being able to build a team around Kevin where those folks are validated as well, so then we have a collective team that's validated, I think is going to be really, really big within our industry. The next, it's not necessarily a threat of new entry, but it's the low overhead costs. So I mean, essentially anybody could really jump into the cloud services. It's not like you need a storefront. You can create some partnerships at a low cost to give you access to some of the platforms and incentives to be able to grow some of those platforms. So from that aspect, There is an opportunity for people to jump into the industry and become competitors at a very low cost. And then the other threat of new entry is continuous learning. So like we said, the cloud is still fairly new, so there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of things that are going to change and happen. So continuous learning is going to be extremely important, and making sure that you're leading that learning curve is only going to better your services. But if you were to fall behind, you're going to lose some clients and partners because of that. So that's just extremely important for us to know going into this field, that hey, we've got to continue to learn. We will not be able to just be experts in one platform. So really learning and growing is going to be extremely important. The next category is buyer power. So currently we have comparable prices to our competitors. There's going to be an increase in users. So anytime one of our clients has an increase in users, there's a decrease in price. So that's an incentive. And like we said, as we grow with our customers, this is something that we can bring to their attention, which makes them feel as though they have some buying power in the conversation. And then lastly, the buying power. I think that is really important, is like we mentioned before, is being able to train a team that our client chooses, so an internal team. So if we transition a company to the cloud and they don't want to maintain us or retain us, is a better word to use, then we will be able to train their actual internal team, so that they won't have to retain us and they can provide solutions to their own issues moving forward. So not a lot of issues in the buying power category. I think it's pretty fair. It's fairly comparable. We don't have a lot of wiggle room there, I think, on either end right now, just because everything is so new and fresh. It'll be interesting to see as the industry grows, what that buying power looks like. It could be quite interesting, I think. So the next one is the threat of substitution. So like we said before, the tech field is always changing and growing. So while many people feel like the cloud is the next big thing and will be here for an extended period of time, that very well may not be true. There could be a 15-year-old kid somewhere right now creating the next big thing, right? So from that aspect, it's somewhat of a gamble, right? So it's going to be pretty important to understand that and know that, hey, technology shifts. So are we willing to shift with the technology? Right now, cloud is our bread and butter, but 10 years from now, that could not be the case. So just understanding that, hey, you're somewhat taking of a risk. We feel as though it's a calculated risk, and the cloud will be here for quite some time. So from that aspect, we feel safe there, but it is something that you just kind of have to know that, hey, this could change at any given moment. The next threat of substitution is there is minimal human interaction required to keep costs low. So there are companies out there, like we said before, that prefer automated services because they're potentially cheaper. They're not customized, but it gets the job done. And there's going to be plenty of companies that's the direction they're going to want to move in. They're going to want to be able to say, hey, you know what? We've been hiring IT guys for years. And the value has depreciated in that area, and there's an opportunity for us to cut some costs here, which is going to essentially allow them to generate more profits. So there are going to be clients that we might have one-offs with them, and then there's going to be other folks that choose to go with an automated service instead. So that's going to be really, really big as far as the threat of substitution. The next piece, the threat of substitution, is partnerships and internal teams. So as we mentioned before, we offer to transition folks to the cloud and then train their internal team. So we understand that everybody's not going to want to retain us. So that's a small gap to where we're saying, hey, you know what? it might be an opportunity for us to get a second profit and not just transition you, but train your internal team. There's definitely going to be large companies, Fortune 500 companies, that are going to have internal teams and will not need our services. And then obviously there's partnerships that you can have which give you incentives as well. So if there's other companies that have better partnerships than we do, the incentives may be better. Right now we have a partnership with Microsoft. We're a Microsoft partner. So obviously Microsoft gives us incentives to help sell their Office 365 as far as seats and things like that, which has a cloud service aspect to it, obviously. So with that in mind, we got to understand that there's other partners out there. Microsoft is currently leading in the cloud platforms, but as we know, things change. So that may not always be the case. So as of right now, we currently have a great partnership, so that is not as big of a threat, but we do understand that it potentially could be as other folks continue to implement and build platforms. And then the last piece is that we have to understand that there could become built-in services to more popular platforms. So once again, those automated services, it may not have to be outsourced anymore. Somebody like Google could say, hey, you know what, if you use your Gmail, we already have 24-hour support just for you being a Gmail user. So there are going to be large competitors who already have a large clientele that are no longer going to need our services if they were to build in services to some of the more popular platforms. So that is something that we have to be mindful of and just be on the lookout for, as well as find the gaps there as to why those built-in services may or may not be beneficial to clients and potential clients. The next piece is supplier power. So as I mentioned before, we are a partner with Microsoft, and Microsoft gives us incentives for our clients taking on their product, right? So in a sense, we almost get paid twice, if you will. So we can work with clients and create our own invoice there, and obviously we would get a payout from our potential clients. But on the other end, as we generate funds from Microsoft, we essentially get a kickback from Microsoft as well. And that's residual kickback. So from that aspect, we really want to solidify some of the services that Microsoft incentivizes for us. The other piece of the supplier power that you have to be aware of is that we are not limited to one cloud supplier for our services. So while we partner with Microsoft, and if folks are looking to transition to the cloud, Microsoft is an option. It's going to be important for our triad to have a sound understanding of just cloud services in general. So there are other platforms out there currently. As we stated before, Microsoft is leading the way in cloud services as far as the platform currently, but we do understand that may not always be the case. So just being mindful of the other suppliers that are out there and making sure that we have a solid foundation as far as knowledge is concerned with those platforms. The other supplier power is currently there's a small number of platform vendors. So there's Amazon, there's Microsoft, there's Google, there's Oracle, as well as IBM. And then there's one other that I can't remember the name of, but they're growing. Currently, I think there might be at like 2 billion or 4 billion. I can't remember what the specific stat there was, but in comparison to the other 5 that you see listed, currently they're not as significant, but they are growing and potentially could be significant within the next 5 years. So that would be important to know. So currently there's only really 5 platforms that people are using, with the Microsoft and Amazon platforms being the larger of the 5. So there could be other cloud platforms, and we just need to know that. And as more become available, we'll have to watch their usage and see if it's beneficial to our clients. Then the last piece is really the competitive rivalry. So platforms, as they continue to grow, they don't necessarily have a direct impact on us as far as how we deal with our the profits that we can make from our clients. It's more of an indirect impact in the sense that there's more for us to learn and understand so that we can work better with our clients, as well as address their needs. The next piece is that large companies with internal teams and partnerships are potentially knock us out of the park. Like we could be out of the conversation. So for example, if Microsoft decided not to partner with us, they don't necessarily lose anything. Currently, the way that the partnership is set up is, as I stated before in the SWOT analysis, large companies like a Microsoft, like an Apple, they come out with products or services, but they come out so fast, and they're taken on by clients so rapidly that they don't have enough time to, or they don't have enough employees to provide the support for as much as they sell. So essentially they incentivize other small businesses like us to go out and be the experts for them and provide that level of support. But essentially, if large companies decided to partner with other folks or create teams that can actually address the need of folks wanting experts for their products and services, we could very easily be out of business. So that's going to be very important for us to be aware of and just kind of keep an eye on. As we stated before, the cloud services platform is becoming more widely used in all industries. So with that being said, it's going to increasingly become more competitive for us and the different types of businesses that are like us. So we just need to kind of keep that in mind as the cloud industry continues to grow. One of the things that we think we offer as a competitive advantage, though, is the customization of services. So through our free consultation, we actually work with clients to evaluate some of the things that they need and find the gaps, but at the same time, we're also listening to our clients to hear what they say they need and make sure that we address those concerns as well. So we provide, after our consultation, we provide clients with an itemized list of the services that we can offer based off of their needs, and we do basically a threat assessment for them so that they can determine what are the top of their priorities. So it could be a two-tier resolution in the sense that, hey, we handle some of their primary things right away, and then 2 to 3 years down the road we say, all right, let's come back and let's handle that second tier of priorities for you. Almost similar to when you take your car into the shop and you get an oil change and you get a phone call and they say, hey, you need tires and you need brakes, but right now, if you can't afford both, the top priority right now is your brakes. Your tires still have enough tread on them to last you another month, right? So we essentially do the same thing as mechanics and say, hey, here's your top priorities, and we allow the customer to choose what it is that they need. So we feel like our competitive advantage is the customization of services, but we do realize, if you look at that last bullet point there, that there may be better automated services along the way, right? So as issues become more consistent with clients, I'm sure that the automated services are going to be updated in the sense that those issues become regular so that the automated services could fix it by themselves. So once again, technology is always growing, right? And new things are happening. So I would imagine that as certain situations become more common, the automated services will improve as well. So that's going to be something that's huge for us to kind of keep in mind and take note of. So our next analysis is really Porter's value chain. So there's 9 different aspects of Porter's value chain. So there's the primary activities, which are the inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing, sales, and service. And we're going to take a look at those first one by one and really go through them. And then we'll finish up by talking about the support activities that all help with the profit margin. So the first is inbound logistics. So what does it really take? What things are we receiving? So it's going to be important for our employees to have up-to-date certifications and consistent trainings, so that their foundational knowledge continues to broaden, and there's breadth and depth there, so that we can continue to provide the best services possible. The next piece is solidifying partnerships. So like we said before, we're a partner of Microsoft. There may be other opportunities for us to partner with other organizations and companies out there. So that's always going to be big. A lot of times that'll lead to other opportunities, but it also realistically helps keep our prices low. So being a Microsoft partner, we're able to come in at that Microsoft price, and really offer our customers what they would get, even if they were a Fortune 500 company. So that's really appealing and something that's going to be extremely important to us to be able to provide as a service. And then those partnerships also give us access to platforms, right? So to be able to continue to learn and grow, it's going to be important to have access to that information, so that you can really get in there and kind of play around with it. So those things are going to be extremely important for us. Obviously, us being a tech company, our inbound logistics are going to be a little bit different than a restaurant, or something like that. So you'll see the smaller bullet points, because you really do have to think outside the box of kind of how a lot of this information was presented to us. So the next piece is operations. So one of the things that we offer to make sure that we provide an optimal experience for our customers is a free consultation. So that gives us the opportunity to meet the clients, whether it's face to face or on the phone, hear their issues, hear their problems, evaluate their system, do a threat assessment of what's actually going on within their systems, and then provide them with feedback. So that's going to be extremely important, and is the first step to us building a strong client rapport, which is the second bullet point there. So we've got to build that validity and trust with our clients, and rapport is the best way to do that. And then the last piece is going to be the proper selection of a project manager and team. So depending on what happens through the consultation and what's decided that the company may need to address their issues, we're going to have to select a specific project manager and team that has the expertise to provide them with the services at a quality level. So the next piece is the outbound logistics. So as we stated before, there is an itemized invoice, if you will, of items that our clients can choose. So the selection of itemized services is going to be really important before we're able to decide on how we want to help our clients. They're going to need to choose what's important to them and what they want to get done right away. We're also going to have to discuss a production schedule. So sometimes clients may have a timeline that they need, and other times, depending on the work that they want done, there may be a specific amount of time that it'll take to complete those projects. So just making sure everybody's on pace with the production schedule that's presented to the clients is going to be extremely important. And then more important than anything else probably is going to be the invoice and payment. So really being able to discuss and determine what's the budget of our clients and what are they able to afford. Is that a payment plan? What does that invoice look like? Are they retaining us? And really have that conversation to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So marketing and sales is really big for us, and we've been trying quite a bit of different things to make sure that we are doing the best that we can in that department. One of the things that we've thought about are advertisements through the bus transit system in the Chapel Hill and RDU area. You will notice that North Carolina is the population in North Carolina is continuing to grow year after year. And what you will notice is that areas like the Raleigh area, the RDU area, and Charlotte are the areas that are growing faster than other cities in comparison in the state of North Carolina. The other piece that's extremely important for us to point out is that Research Triangle Park in the RDU area is the largest Research Triangle Park in the country currently. So there's tons of businesses within Research Triangle Park, from small to large. So that's extremely important. There's tech companies here, there's financial companies here, healthcare systems, there's Duke, there's Rex, there's Wake Med, there's Carolina. You've got researchers here. So in reality, this is a great place to kind of market. The Charlotte area is also the other place that's extremely growing in population and has a lot of folks from the industries that we would be interested in, from small businesses to large businesses to tech to finance. So marketing through the Observer in Charlotte is going to be extremely important as well. And then lastly, industry magazines like Tech Diversity are going to be important. That's another partnership opportunity with Microsoft. So being able to highlight some of the things that we're doing or people that we're working with through other professionals in our field and exposing them to it is going to be important, and helps build that relationship and rapport that we're looking for, as well as bring on new clients. The next piece is the partnership with companies known within the industry. So as we mentioned before, we have a large client currently that has an internal sales team. So one of the partnerships or kind of agreements that we've gotten to negotiate to a certain extent is that we are going to help them transition to the cloud, and in return they are going to serve as a point of reference with some of their other clients through their internal sales team. So if they're able to land clients for us, there's an incentive for the internal sales team there, which helps us not have to hire a sales team for ourselves, and maybe as a smaller business be able to distribute those funds in a different way to benefit our business. The next piece of the marketing is something that we call gold papers. So these are innovative ideas within the industry that just really get people going and create discussion within the tech industry. So that's going to be really big, and we broadcast that through our blogs and some of our social media, as well as our learning centers, learning community. But that's also a way for us to market our professionalism and show our expertise as a business. We can build in community engagement through individualized events where we're physically there, or continue to build through our social media platforms and blogs. So those are all the different ways that we're currently marketing and considering marketing as a brand and business. And the last piece is the service. So as we mentioned before, we offer the free consultation so that we can give you the optimal service. We can customize your needs and the frequency of what we're actually offering. We provide a learning community just for being one of our clients. So, sometimes, most times people like a discount. So in reality, the learning community is your discount. It gives you access to be able to problem solve and ask questions on your own without having to pay someone for it. So providing the learning community as an added benefit is really appealing to some of our clients. For clients that actually purchase the Office 365 through us, they have 24-hour guaranteed customer support. And then we also offer to upkeep of their software. So as we mentioned before, cloud services and making sure their system is secure, but also with WordPress and the maintenance for the plugins and things like that I mentioned from the SWOT analysis is going to be important as well. So just noting that those services are available from working with our clients is huge. And then the last piece is really going to be the support activities. So you have a firm infrastructure, so we definitely need a legal officer to handle our contracts, And one of the other pieces that we talked about is the learning community, and that's where the Cloud Army comes into place. So one of our charges internally or goals is to build a Cloud Army. So that is a group of professionals that we've trained at from the entry level and at a expert level to continue to learn about the cloud and things that are trending, so that we can build a team of IT engineers to go out and help our clients and become the project managers in the team that help them get their optimal utilization. So that infrastructure is really, really big. And then, as we said before, our finance team to follow through with invoices, and because we customize what we offer to our clients, that finance aspect and the infrastructure is going to be extremely important. Because people can add and drop things. So just making sure that we have that continued open line of communication is going to be very, very big. The human resource management really extends from the Cloud Army. So having those project managers and experts within the field to train the rest of the Cloud Army is going to be extremely important. How do we bring on professionals? How do we recruit them? Are all things that from a human resource management point are going to be extremely important. The next piece is technology development. So I've mentioned that we have some intellectual property opportunities, so that's going to be huge. We've also mentioned certifications, and just staying on top of your game and leading that learning curve is going to be extremely important for our company. And making sure we stay up to date on the platforms, whether they're new or some of the more notable ones, is going to be important as well, so that we can talk about platforms that are beneficial to our customers, most importantly, and just understanding that hybrids could potentially be on the way. And then the last piece is the procurement, right? So I think more importantly than anything else, it goes back to what we mentioned before. Those support activities is going to be that Cloud Army, right? Because that's going to allow us to grow, and those partnerships with companies is going to allow us to provide incentives as well as the brand recognition that we need to continue to increase our profit margin. So really, I think those 2 points in the procurement are going to be the heaviest. So you've noticed that I've mentioned the Cloud Army quite a bit, and that is something that internally we are steadily building, because we understand that that is going to be one of the catalysts for growth for us. So it's extremely important for us to do that. And then the second piece that's going to be extremely important, and we've mentioned throughout the presentation, is going to be partnerships. So those in partnerships are once again going to provide incentives, but it also allows us to have the brand recognition needed to potentially land larger clients. This is my presentation of my situation analysis for our Triad, a cloud services company. Thank you.